This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy's staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps.
Welcome to Revolution Radio and the Opperman Report with private investigator and cyber forensic innovator Ed Opperman. For the next 2 hours, you'll be drawn into the world of conspiracy theories, strategies of resistance to the New World Order, high-profile court cases, and interviews with authors, witnesses, and experts on these topics and more. And now, from freedom's lips to your ears, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Ed Opperman, private investigator, cyber forensic innovator, as Mr. Jancic likes to call me, which is actually a digital forensic investigator. And I have a blog called The Opperman Report, which you can always check in on and see what upcoming guests we have and about past shows. All of our shows are archived on the blog, The Opperman Report. And we're always looking, too, for guest bloggers who want to come in. If you have a story you're passionate about, you want to share, you're welcome to submit a story to me, and we'll put it up there. Also wrote a book called How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. And you can find that on my website, emailrevealer.com. And my website, emailrevealer.com, that's where you can go and visit, and you can find all the kind of services that I offer as a private investigator and a digital forensic investigator. Like if you think you're being cheated on, your wife's cheating on you, you give me your email address, we trace it back to online dating websites, cyberstalking investigations, anything you could imagine. Now, today's show, we have a returning guest, author William Ramsey. And we've had him on before, talking about the satanic cult activity and involvement with the West Memphis 3 murderers down there in West Memphis, Arkansas. In fact, he was on that show that I guest hosted for Douglas Dietrich, Saturday Night Firing Lines, a couple of weeks back. And you should check that out. The archive is up on that, on the Revolution Radio archives. So you got to look for Doug's show. It's a Saturday night show, and it says guest host Ed Opperman with William Ramsey. We had a couple of bloggers on there. And it was a really lively debate, as usual, whenever you get involved with the West Memphis 3 discussion. But William Ramsey has a lot of insight. I think he's doing more work. I'm a big fan of this guy. He's doing more work as far as the satanic cult activity with the West Memphis 3 than I think anybody's brave enough to be out there putting forward right now, because it's a really hot topic, and there's a lot of aggressive counterattack when you bring that stuff out from this bunch. And I hope we got into that a lot on the last show and really brought forward about how these fans of these convicted murderers are just so obsessive and aggressive in their response. Now, after that show last Saturday night with William Ramsey, we did an after show. We had a little chat over Skype, and we recorded it. And we're going to be putting that up on YouTube. We edited out all the bad words and all the gossip and the innuendos and stuff that we don't want to put on the public. But we recorded that, and we're going to put that up on my YouTube channel, or the station's YouTube channel, which is called Revolution Radio on YouTube. And my channel is called Ed Opperman. on YouTube. Once again, I want to thank my producer, Ann, who is such a big help every week, over here planning the shows and getting everything together and stuff like that. She's just a huge help and a great creative, artistic person. She's an architect and just a brilliant person and a great asset to this show. And I don't think we'd be here this long doing this well without Ann's participation. And now don't forget, this is a listener-sponsored station. We have no corporate sponsors, so you have to support the station to keep us going, and we haven't reached this month's goal yet, so you have to visit freedomslips.com and click on the donate button. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, hit the station, freedomslips.com, and click on the donate button. You don't have to donate $1 million, although we'll take it. But just $5, $10, whatever you could do every month, every week. If you enjoy the shows we're doing, please help support us. Last week we did a show with convoyofhope.org, which is a relief effort group that they were down in the Philippines, and they were doing all this stuff down in the Philippines. Don't forget, they still need help down in the Philippines. So visit the convoyofhope.org. You can volunteer in person. You can donate supplies. You can donate money. And also, too, there was a bunch of tornadoes this week. A whole town was devastated, and convoyofhope.org. They'll be there right now. They're there on the ground right now helping those people over there, too. So this is a great organization. I endorse them 100%. I know some of these people personally, and they know people in my church. I know them. So I really endorse this group. I know that there's no people there with huge, $1 million salaries, diverting funds away from where it's doing good. Okay, now next week, next week is Thanksgiving, okay? And we think what we're going to do is like a Thanksgiving show. Maybe I'll give some cooking recipes while we're at it, okay? But we're doing a Thanksgiving show about when I do like a round table with callers who can call in and describe what they're thankful about and some kind of inspirational stuff like that I'm hoping to do. Hopefully my daughter Victoria, a lot of people know about her from listening to me on Doug's show and stuff like that, will be participating as well. So let's get started now with our guest today, William Ramsey, who is the author of a couple of books. Let's see. We have he's also a filmmaker, too. By the way, you got to check out his YouTube channel, William Ramsey. He has some great stuff he puts up on YouTube all the time. But he's the author of Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order, and Abomination, Devil Worship, and Deception in the West Memphis 3 Murders. William, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me back on your show.
Hey, dude, you can come on anytime. I love having you on. We're definitely on the same tune here, on the same wavelength. So,
well, I'm glad to answer any questions you have on this show about any of my books.
Okay, great. Okay, let's start off with the first book was the Aleister Crowley book, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm interested in how you got into Crowley, and also the 9/11 connections, because I haven't read the book. I'll be honest with you. So why don't you get started?
Well, I've always kind of been a researcher. Like I was in Washington, D.C. from 1995 to 1998, and I covered. Well, I didn't really cover, but I was following many stories about the Clinton administration and things that were happening, but from kind of a local level. And so I always was just reading. And when 9/11 happened, I believed that, I believed the official story, but I kind of like the scales came off my eyes around 2003, 2004. And I said, something about it just didn't make sense. And since that time, I just read everything and watched every documentary I could, like Loose Change and all these other ones. And I just kept noticing these numbers kept popping up, which I didn't really understand. I mean, the fact that the event happened on 9/11, I didn't really key into it. There was a guy named, I think it was Eric May. He was a military guy who also kind of keyed in the numbers. Well, I started reading. Well, it led me back to the occult, this kind of Satanism. And so I really followed through, and I recognized, at least I identified, that there were significant numerical occult markers in the event of 9/11, 11, 77, 93, and 175, that led directly back to Aleister Crowley.
Let me interrupt you. Now you're saying you had no interest in Crowley or the occult or Satanism before you became aware of 9/11?
No, I mean, I was never a practitioner. I think that, I grew up, with heavy metal and saw a lot of stuff like Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that, but I never thought that, I never was a reader at all. I mean, I had seen the Satanic Bible. You know, I was familiar with these characters at a very, what I would consider a surface level.
Right.
But once I saw that 9/11 was fake and that there was a Crowley connection, that led me to really read everything I could on Crowley. So I read all the biographies. I read all his original stuff. And it kind of gave me an insight. Like there were a lot of people who are pro-Crowley who hid so much about his life away from the public. He was a very complex character, wealthy, very, very well educated from, the English, British Empire at the height of its empire. And, he was clearly, after I'd read about him for a little while, he's clearly an agent of the British Secret Service his whole life. But a lot of that stuff was not really public, and what he really thought and did was really remarkable. And not only what I found out about him, but how many people he influenced, how many people admired Crowley also was, something that I found to be interesting, because I didn't know how much his ideology impacted the 20th century. I didn't realize it until I read him. And, people like L. Ron Hubbard were huge admirers. People like L. Ron Hubbard, Timothy Leary, the Beatles.
Right.
It just goes on and on. Manson has a connection to him. All these other people in the Process Church, they all have read and looked into Crowley. So that's really what was the inspiration for my book. I'd always, like I said, I'd always been a reader. I'd read all kinds of, I was into, I guess, what you term conspiracy literature. Yeah. And once I realized I had a different view that I thought was valid, that was what led me to self-publish my first book, Prophet of Evil. And the reason that the title is such, because Crowley thought of himself as a prophet of a new age. So he really thought of himself. He actually wrote of himself as one of the 7 most important people that ever lived, which is a pretty bold statement. But he put himself on par with Buddha, Jesus Christ, Muhammad. So he saw himself in that sense that he was going to create a new religion for a new age, and I believe that his ideas influenced the people who did the 9/11 event, and that's why they put his numbers in there. 11 is really a kind of a power number, a master number that Crowley used. It was a number of death and destruction, but it also symbolizes the life of a magician, because it fuses 5 and 6 together. The numbers 5, the pentagram and the hexagram, which represent the macrocosm and the microcosm. So, all those things come together in that occult thing, which I never knew anything about until I started writing Crowley. But 11 pops up in 9/11, in the date and the air. First plane that hit the buildings was Flight 11, and 93 is really specific to Crowley. Crowley used this thing called the gematria, which was part of the Kabbalah. He really liked the Kabbalah, but the gematria equates numbers to words, and it shows that there's correspondences and meanings in the universal sense. Like Crowley believed everything could be distilled into mathematics, but the two words that equate to number 93 are Greek words that Crowley used. One is called thelema, and the other is agape. Thelema means will, and the other is agape, love, and those equal 93. So people who follow Crowley call themselves Thelemites, people of the will, and they actually will sign off their missives or notices to each other as 93, 93, 93 instead, and that's just kind of like a mathematical simplification of Crowley's central dictum, which is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, which is an 11-word, 11-syllable phrase. It's really amazing.
Wow.
So you see that this 11 and 93, 77 is also an important, it's like the symbol of the perfected man for Crowley. And you see that Flight 77 and 175, like when people are really into Satanism, they always talk about the adoration of Satan. And 175 was a ritual that Crowley systematized. He basically systematized all of his rituals in having numerical things so that people could practice them. And 175 was adoring the God that you love. So those are the flight plane numbers: 11, 77, 93, and 175. And the date itself is really 9/11. It's the 11th thing of September, and that even has correlations into witchcraft itself. Like when people create a magical circle, in Crowley's system, it's 9 by 11. There's an internal circle and an external circle. So
let me ask you a question. Now, with all this study this is an intense study you've done into this. Now, I was watching one of your videos today, and they were showing a ritual that these processings were doing, and I just got a bad feeling about it. And I says, boy, when I'm watching this, I'm watching a real occult ritual, and it's kind of like inviting things into my life that I don't want any part of. Do you have any kind of problem with that? Like all this study you do, that you have like a fear or an apprehension?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that these are really dangerous people, and it's it's a dangerous subject. But I do, I attend church, and I'm a Christian, and I pray about stuff. So I do. But I'd also think that I felt like it was my responsibility to tell people this because it's important that they know. Because there are certain people in like the 9/11 community who know it's a fraud, but they don't understand its occult elements. That there's a part of it that is a spiritual event. It's a very important event because the intent behind it was to facilitate change all over the world, really.
And it was a massive blood sacrifice. It was 3 million people sacrificed. 3,000, yeah.
Yeah, and think about all the changes that they used for that. They used this what I would call a lying wonder, to put it within biblical reference. What they used this to make changes. There was war. There was change in our political laws. In our economy, in our daily lives. It was used as a rationale for further, state invasiveness in all of our lives. So it's like a huge magical event that created change in the entire world. And it's more than just a political event or something from the deep state, in my opinion.
I agree with you. Now, what about the symbolism of twin towers throughout history and that symbolism involved in the occult? There's something there too, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the buildings themselves, once I researched the buildings and how they were built, and the actual architect, if I can remember his name, it's, oh gosh, I can't remember it offhand, but the architect is a very knowledgeable person within the occult. And the buildings symbolize Jachin and Boaz, the two symbolic pillars that were in the front of the temple and Jerusalem, but also they're very prominent within masonry, so it's an occult element. They also symbolize the pillars of Hercules, so like you're passing through a different portal. Both buildings were 111 stories tall. 110 stories tall. So it was like two big 11s. And in Crowley's system, this 11 wasn't just a number in his uses. It was also an ideogram, meaning it had the number 11 itself, as is written with two separate things, symbolizes this duality, this concept of two parts, separate but coming. They're supposed to come together. So the buildings themselves were incredibly rich and redolent with occult meaning. And in the center, I don't know if you remember that, there was this big brass kind of sphere. It was called the Great Bronze Caryatid, which is an interesting statement. I mean, if you go see like the movie Fight Club, and one of the scenes, they actually blow up great spherical caryatid, and it rolls down and rolls into a Starbucks, I think. Yeah. But it's not a caryatid by term. If you look up the term caryatid, the caryatid was this. It references old Greek architecture. It's a statue that holds up a temple. So this spherical caryatid is like a representation or a alluded to this architectural mechanism of the past, of that the World Trade Center was more than just a couple of buildings they put together. And it's such a remarkable building. I mean, it's a Rockefeller. Obviously, they used to call him. They named him after. It was basically the Rockefellers were the ones who were behind it. It was Nelson and his brother. So they called the two towers Nelson. I can't remember his brother's name offhand right now, but
it was David Rockefeller. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Nelson and David. Yeah, so they called those were like colloquial references. Was Nelson and David? David's still alive, but they stand out so remarkably from the skyline of New York. I mean, and they were those. I think that those two towers were even put in like they browbeated and pulled strings to just have those towers created that nobody really wanted, and they were, it was almost like they were built to be brought down in a strange way. I know that's probably way out there, but
no. I was going to get to that because if they're symbolic, like you said, it was of Moab and these two pillars,
Jashin and Moaz or something.
Yeah, right. So now that it had to be that. And even I've heard some stuff, too, that the architect is involved in, like, a time travel. He's, like, a time traveler guy.
Yeah. If you want to go down the rabbit hole, research the architect. He makes all kinds of occult drawings. He's associated with occultists. He says that he received elements of the creation of that building from a demon, like with some weird name like Google D's or something like that. Like, he talked to him. The people in the occult call them spirits, but Christians call them demons.
Right.
So there's this supernatural occult element to the buildings themselves, and it's really remarkable. And he's still around, the architect, guy who created it. But
have you ever had a chance to contact him or get a hold of him?
I'm not. No.
No, you don't want to, or
he is apparently just a very peculiar. I've seen some of his artwork, and he's super. He's a high, what I would term a high adept or a high initiate of the darker, the mysteries. He just knows it all. It's incredible.
Right. But I know what you're saying too. That I'm also a Christian, and I attend church, and I ask my church to pray for me about these things when I'm exposing these kind of topics and stuff like that, because I want that prayer covering over me, and I believe it's only through my faith in Jesus Christ that I have protection to go forth in these areas. But then again, too, I don't want to press my luck.
I'm the same way. I mean,
yeah,
I do, but I think that it's important for people to realize that these types of people and events are out there, and they affirm a number of things that some people actually are into the occult. They're obsessed with the occult, really, and that they act on it, and people have to be warned. It's kind of like a duty of a watchman or something to let people know, because they're out there. The Process Church is still functioning. It's still it's incredible.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the process for sure. And I want to bring up too that William Ramsey is one of the. He's been doing a lot of research and a lot of videos he just put up on YouTube about the Process Church, and it's really, really good stuff. And he's doing work that a lot of people aren't doing, a lot of research that isn't getting out there. But now, do you find, too, that in the church today, in the Christian church today, that a lot of the pastors and leadership of the church are afraid to bring up these topics? They're afraid to confront these topics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that almost any time you go into a church, they'll never discuss this. And I think that it's irresponsible on their part, because I think it's a certain element of the Christian faith that there is active evil. That if you read through it, there is a significant a countervailing force to God that operates in even in the New Testament. So it's there, and people get involved in witchcraft. I mean and it's been there through history. So I think it's naive and irresponsible not to address this in these churches, And I think that a lot of so many churches have so much. There's different character in each different Christian church, but I think that their impetus is not to scare people, so they don't want to discuss it in those venues. And so I can understand that,
Yeah, I can understand it too. But if we're not to stand up against this, then who is? Everyone else seems to be going along with it or encouraging it.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like the baseline has been raised. Like now we have all these vampire TV shows, and even in our cartoons that we feed our kids and stuff, in the toys in the toy store, the baseline has been increased to an acceptable level of occultism and witchcraft in just daily life.
I agree.
Yeah.
So it's scary, and I think that the first thing is just to have people aware of it and to understand what's happening. That these people really are into it, and that's like the first step at solving it is like, hey, this is bad. These are not. This is not positive. And then these people who get into the occult for power, I mean, it eats them too. It eats those people alive, plus the people they affect with it. It's just pestilential for all people, which is why, the Old Testament and New Testament, abhors it, and all the doctrines that are in the Bible, say don't ever get involved with it.
Right. Even at lower levels, like astrology and stuff like that, and tarot cards and all that kind of stuff is even, I believe, negative influence in your life.
Yeah,
but now we're saying though that, and I kind of agree with this, that the Twin Towers were created for the purpose of being destroyed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I ran into, there was one other guy who had that kind of principle, that position, but it was almost like that was the case. I mean, when were they? I think they were finally completed in 1970, and I mean, what it would indicate is that there was some long-range planning up until the event of 9/11.
Yeah,
that people were really trying to put together this event, and one of the fascinating correlations between the long-term planning is that George Bush Sr. made his New World Order speech 11 years to the day in front of Congress prior to that event, to the 9/11, September 11th, 2001. He was at, if you want to look it up, September 11th, 1990, he made that speech where he talks about, this New World Order. It's often, excerpted throughout the YouTube, but it's a pretty famous, like, how we're going to reformat the world. So there's that correlation, that numerical correlation of magicians and everything like that moving into, the 9/11 event. So it's indicative of some very crafty long-term planning.
Yeah, I believe the Pentagon, too, the groundbreaking over there took place on September 11th as well.
That's what I heard in 1941 or 1940.
Right. Okay, well,
there were other events like that happened. Like Hitler gave some speeches on September 11th that were like about, creating a new world order, or like refashioning the world. And he's a master occultist. And then the event of the Chilean overthrow of Allende happened on September 11th. Can't remember what year that was, but
okay, well, we're coming up to a break.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're coming up to a break. I just want to remind everybody that we're a listener-sponsored station. In order to support the station, you got to go to freedomslips.com and hit that donate button. We're on today with William Ramsey, who's an excellent guest and doing excellent work here. Brave man, putting himself out there in the firing line. And he's the author of Abomination, Devil Worship and Deception in the West Memphis Three Murders, and Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. And you could tell by listening to him that he's done a lot of research into this. He's done a lot of detailed research that he has on the top of his head. So I'm really endorsing his opinions here. Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern in Studio A. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.
The Empire is in peril.
You're probably too young to know, but the Empire is always in some kind of peril. I may have been overly rude earlier when I called you a pirate.
And I may have been overly charitable when I said I wasn't.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Be here Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to catch Roxy Lopez straight from the Valley of the Sun. Her discussions run from chemtrails to sovereignty, aliens to conspiracy facts. So join us for The Truth Denied with Roxy Lopez. Again, that's Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
You ever get tired of being wrong? You can't kill the future.
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay. That was weird. Okay, we're back with the... All right, let's try it again. Okay, we're back with William Ramsey, author and filmmaker. He's the author of Prophet of Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order, and he's also the author of Abomination, Devil Worship and Deception in the West Memphis 3 case. Now, William, I know also, too, that you do some videos. You have videos for sale as well? William?
Well, I did. I have a couple on Amazon Video on Demand. One is one about Aleister Crowley, and then I was, just made a repository one called Occult Hollywood with that references all the occult numerology in films. So people probably, such as myself, have glossed over all these references have been in films for this kind of magical knowledge. But there's so many directors who put them in the films, like Polanski and Oliver Stone. And so I just referenced those in that film.
Oh, wait a second. What does Oliver Stone have in his films?
Oh, well, for example, he did that one film about 9/11, about the Twin Towers, and it featured Nicolas Cage.
Right.
And you'll see the 93, right as the buildings are about to drop, you'll see on one of the fireman's hats, he's looking right at you, it says 93. So it's clear that it's there as a numerical reference. And Stone has done that on a number of things. If you watch Natural Born Killers,
right,
right before the movie starts, there's a television that has on the TV is 77 Sunset strip. So he puts in this other new, important high number within the occult. So Stone knows what's going on, and Polanski too has 11s and all this stuff. And it's the same thing. Like if you see the movie They Live, and they're about to walk into the building where they get their glasses, there's a huge 93 on the wall.
Oh, right.
I mean, so these are things that if you're not an initiate, you wouldn't key into it. Crowley meant to keep a lot of this stuff secret, and once you kind of understand what Crowley was up to, a lot of these things, 11s and 93s that have been right in plain sight the whole time, are much more apparent.
Well, Oliver Stone, he produced that movie about the.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You were coming in and out there.
Okay, sorry about that. Are you familiar with that movie that James Wood starred in about the McMartin preschool?
Yeah, and I heard that it was that was part of a whitewash, but that Stone and Woods are good friends, right?
No, I did not know that, but yes, but that's interesting because Stone produced that movie, and Woods was on the plane the week before and had a whole 9/11 story himself.
Right, he had a 9/11 story, but do you know that his story verifies the fiction?
True.
So he says he was on there with the terrorists.
Right.
So he put out a story that keeps the fable alive. So that indicates a lot to me.
Yeah, that's very interesting now that you mention that. And he was also, I remember now too, that he showed up at the O.J. Simpson trial as a spectator. He was there several days, and that Lance Ito brought him in the back to the judge's chambers to have a conversation with him.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character. He's somebody you could learn a lot from, and he's very smart. He's a very intelligent guy.
Right, yeah, I know about that.
And remember, Stone is from Yale, too, so that to me is also that place it's illuminated, the whole place. I mean, if it comes from Yale, you can just assume they know the secrets.
Have you ever looked into the connections with the Process Church and Scientology, and even some Manson characters with the O.J. Simpson?
Yeah. Not to O.J. Simpson. I'd heard that there was one, but the Process is a splinter group of Scientology. They used a lot of Scientology techniques. They used their E-meter, which is this, electronic thing that's supposed to be able to judge your emotional states. So the Process is, they admitted it, that they came out of Scientology.
For people who don't know yet, why don't you get into the whole definition of the Process Church, how they got started, and what we know about them? Because I know you've done a lot of work on that as well, and you have to. If you're talking about this kind of stuff, you got to talk about the Process Church.
So I think so. Yeah. They really are probably like the SS of the occult, like the hardest of the hardcore members. And it's a highly hierarchical group founded by a very intelligent guy named Robert de Grimston, whose real name is Robert Moore. But they were they came out of Scientology, and Hubbard was a devotee of, like I stated earlier, of Crowley. So these guys, there were three people really who started it off. It was Robert de Grimston Moore, was his real name, his girlfriend McLean, and then another guy named Robert Wiley. And Robert Wiley wrote a book called Love, Fear, Sex, Death that kind of talks about certain parts of the process. I don't think he discloses everything, but he talks a lot about the hierarchy, the individuals, and what they really believed. But they were formed out of England. They were led by these spirits. They had these communications they would get in prayer groups or meditation groups and try to receive stuff from what they call the beings, capital B beings, and they led them to a place in the north part of the Yucatan Peninsula called Xtul, Xtul, where they, that's where Robert de Grimston wrote a lot of he received a lot of his ideas, which were very odd, hodgepodge of essentially what he believed is there are four different great beings who ruled the world. It was Satan, Lucifer, Christ, and Jehovah, and everybody could be part of them, but each one of these gods had different things to say, and some of the ones by like Lucifer were really, you know, man is a virus type stuff, and they then moved to New Orleans and set up shop all over the United States. I mean, and you have to put the process within the context of the late '60s world where there's political assassinations, fear of nuclear bombs, racial conflict. You know, so they really thought that the world was coming to an end, but they believed they were going to be the ones to facilitate that. That was one of their central kind of ideas. And once the whole Manson thing went down in L.A.
Oh, yeah, but before we get to that, because you mentioned they were down in New Orleans, right? Now, are you familiar with the story by Peter Lavenda that the Process Church was incorporated by the same attorney that incorporated that church that was involved with those JFK assassin guys?
I did not know that, but I would believe it. Lavenda is really, I mean, we could do a story on Lavenda, but that guy has a history. He knows a lot.
Right.
He goes way, 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 way back. You know, a lot of the guys who talk about the occult and like reveal things about the occult are high occultists themselves, which is why they know it. That's one thing I've learned. So a lot of these guys that are out there, you know, talking about these mysteries about UFOs and ancient civilizations and all that are high initiates.
Well, and you see right now on the History Channel is owned by Rupert Murdoch, and it's turned into the Ancient Aliens channel.
Yeah.
You know, like everything on there is Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, and if you want to, I mean, that all has been debunked. This one guy who I listen to quite a bit, Chris White, has pretty much shown that is just a bunch of, you know, hocus pocus, you know, stuff. So, but yeah, so I did not hear that from Lavenda. Lavenda, you know, he wrote. I've read his books, his three-part series about what was it? Gosh, I can't remember the title of it, but he knows a lot. And
he has some YouTube videos. Peter Lavenda has some YouTube videos where he describes how he grew up next door to an Orthodox Catholic church. That was a bizarre little church, and everyone who was a member of this church was also a bishop in the church. And it wasn't like a real mainstream Catholic church. This was like a little group. And all the guys in this church were guys like David Ferry, Guy Bannister, and all the characters that you see in the Oliver Stone version of the JFK events.
Right, they were called like the traveling bishops or something like that. There was something about them that they traveled around.
Okay, well, yeah, well, the same lawyer that incorporated that church incorporated the Process Church as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know, these guys have connections, you know, all over. They're grouped and you know, there's occultists all over the place. I mean, like, if you want to talk about JFK, I mean, seeing that tomorrow has been 50 years to the day, E. Howard Hunt, who had a huge involvement in that assassination and the subsequent cover-up and the murders and stuff like that. He started out as, well, he was a CIA agent, but he was also a novel writer. And he wrote 3 occult novels.
Really?
That went into the occult in a deep understanding. So before the JFK assassination, he knew, you know, a lot of these guys write fictional novels because they know the facts. And he knew all of them. I mean, he wrote under, it's interesting, his, I think his pseudonym was David St. John. So if you want to look that up, look up David St. John. Those are the ones that he wrote. He put out these kind of 150-page spy type stuff books, but 3 of them were cult related. But they advertised his books right alongside other such great spy fiction novelists like John le Carré, who was also a British spy. I think his name, I can't remember, Stockman is his real name, and also the author of the James Bond novels, Ian Fleming. So here's Howard Hunt, who was involved in Watergate, on just all kinds of stuff. I mean, he shows up everywhere.
Yeah,
believe it or not, and through the whole like 60s and 70s. Here's this guy writing occult novels and also spy novels that are advertised alongside Ian Fleming and John le Carré. All right, so a lot of people don't know that because he didn't use his real name; he used the pseudonym.
Yeah, E. Howard Hunt was involved in everything. The Watergate, the Kennedy assassination, Bay of Pigs. The guy was one of these guys was around everything. Now, what do you have about any kind of occult involvement with the JFK assassination? Because now,
well, I mean,
yeah.
I think that it's like November 22nd, so it's like double 11s. There's all kinds of stories. There's like the 33 King Kill story. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it talks about the Masons. But a lot of those guys who were involved in it, had a occult understanding. They had an understanding about occult precepts, and it's just like the head of the Errol Warren was the magister of the temple for the Masons in California. So you have the head of like the Warren Mission. Yeah, it's like this high Masonic occultist that nobody really ever seems to point out. And you can look that up. That's all public knowledge.
Yeah, it always seems like this satanic cult ingredient and all these things is always left out. No one has any problem talking about it.
Yeah, it's just like the West Memphis 3. Like I'm reading about when I first started reading about it, nobody was even talking about it, and I'm like, this whole thing is a cult. I mean, all the followers, supporters are occultists. The guys are occultists. I mean, why doesn't anybody ever? They just gloss over all this stuff. And occult just means secret. So they're, to brand them as what type of, Satanist or whatever is a whole nother level of analysis. But just saying that these guys are into secrets and into secret knowledge and stuff like that. And you don't want to get into that, just like the JFK. Like, I mean, the JFK thing is really bizarre. Like Leary was involved in giving Mary Pinchot Meyer LSD to give to Kennedy, and then both Kennedy dies, and then Mary Pinchot Meyer, is killed suspiciously on the canals of Georgetown later. And Leary is this huge Crowley fan, and who was hanging around with Aldous Huxley. Did we talk about that on one of those earlier interviews? Maybe it was a different interview I had with somebody.
No, I think we talked about that in the after show. When it was really, really late and we were all half falling asleep, and we got into a lot of really good stuff that night. We're going to be publishing that. Now, what about
that was a weird synchronicity, too, was the fact that Huxley, Kennedy, and C.S. Lewis all died on that same day, 50 years ago.
Oh, get out of here. Wait, on the same day or same day?
Yeah, they all died. They all died November 11th. No, excuse me, November 22nd, 1963.
Really? Wait, what is that list again of people who died?
Yep.
What are the names
again?
again?
Aldous Huxley, the writer of Brave New World.
Sure.
John F. Kennedy, and C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Screw Tape Letters, all that stuff. Friend of Tolkien. But it's interesting, like, there is this weird subtext of LSD and drugs in that whole event, because even, like, Huxley, apparently his wife is still around. Her name is Laura Archera Huxley, his second wife. But she was administering LSD into his mouth as he was passing away. Same day John F. Kennedy assassination happened, yeah.
Wow, that's good information. You got to do a video on that one, man. Get that stuff out. That's good stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually there is a book out there. I can't remember the title of it, but somebody wrote a book about those three people passing away at the same time. There is somebody who's written a book about that. I can't recollect the title of it right now.
Okay, now back to Crowley.
But there is just one more thing. I'm sorry, one more thing. There is a good book about the whole Mary Pinchot Meyer Leary Kennedy connection that just came out by somebody who was like part of the family. I think it's called Mary's Ghost or Mary Pinchot's Ghost. Have you heard of that book?
No, I have not. No.
That guy would be he would be a good person to interview, Mary, because she was right in the thick of things. Shoot.
Well, one of the things is getting back to Leary, Crowley, the Beatles, and the Process Church. Now, were you aware that when John Lennon met Yoko Ono in that art exhibit in London, that was run by the Process Church?
No, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
The art gallery was owned and run by the Process Church, and that specific art exhibit that evening was run by the Process Church. Now, what do you know about the connection? Oh, yeah. And later on, I talked to Jim Rothstein about this because, I met Mark David Chapman. I met him down
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I met Mark David Chapman the weekend he shot John Lennon. And it was at Yippie headquarters on the Lower East Side of New York. And the Yippies were all involved with Leary, of course, and LSD by the boatload. And it was a real. And next door was a guy who wrote a book on the JFK assassination, A.J. Weberman, who was part of the Yippies and part of the Jewish Defense Organization. So it was a cesspool down there of agents, KGB agents, and all kind of informants and everything, drug dealers.
That's amazing. The book I was referencing is called Mary's Mosaic, The CIA Conspiracy to Murder JFK, Mary Pinchot Meyer, and Their Vision for World Peace by Peter Janney. He's a good interview. I think Kevin Barrett just interviewed him recently. Kevin Barrett of kind of a 9/11 truther guy.
So he's available for interviews, this guy you're talking about?
Absolutely, and it's an excellent book.
Okay, good. Maybe we'll get the three of us on at the same time. Oh, hey, if you want to give us a link to that in the chat room, if you're in the Skype chat room with me and Ann, give us a link to that. We'll put it in the station chat room, to the link to the thing you just mentioned.
I'll give you the Amazon link.
What else do you have connections between the Beatles, the Process Church, and because are you familiar too about how the lyrics 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the children go to heaven was written in the Spawn Ranch over there with the Manson family before it was published in the White Album?
I've heard some really strange things like that. There was correlations between the White Album, which is definitely their weirdest album, the Beatles' weirdest album, and Manson. And there's other things that, you want to hear, I have some really bizarre correlations. Okay. So Manson's buddy was this guy by the name of Bobby Beausoleil, right?
Sure.
He was involved in the killing of Hinman. But before that even happened, before he was even hanging out with Manson, he was in San Francisco, where supposedly Manson was as well. But he stayed at a place with a Crowley follower by the name of Kenneth Anger.
Sure.
Who made avant-garde films. So
hold on a second. Mark David Chapman.
Hold on. I think I know what you're going to say. A week before the Lennon killings, Kenneth Anger and Chapman met.
Oh, I didn't know that, but I know he gave him bullets. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there is this weird correlation between Chapman and one of the last interviews that Lennon gave was to, I think, Playboy, where he said all the Beatles were about doing what you want, which is kind of a watered down feel of Crowley's dictum, which is do what thou wilt.
Yeah. So there has
if you read, basically Yoko Ono said she was a witch. She basically has come out and said she's a witch, and in their household they had their live-in tarot card reader, and they used to do all kinds of weird rituals. Like Yoko Ono is just straight up. She knows all those people, I'm sure. I'm sure that she might even be part of the process. I wouldn't even know.
Well, by the way, A.J. Weberman, the author of Coup d'Etat in America, who's the first guy to match up the pictures of the three tramps with the Watergate burglars who lived across the street from the Yippie headquarters where I met Mark David Chapman, he used to hang out with Lennon and Yoko in their apartment at the Dakota eating Kentucky Fried Chicken on their bed in their bedroom. Okay, that's how well he knew them. Okay, and he was also the Dylan garbologist. He used to go through Dylan's garbage and try and decipher lyrics and stuff like that. Really, really interesting character who today is the head of the Jewish Defense Organization and which is a militant group. And he actually took hostages. He took hostages in his apartment, in the lobby of his apartment across the street from Yippie headquarters. He took a hostage of Ramdam, who was a private investigator, a very well-known private investigator, and one of the heads of the Jewish Defense League. And he locked them in his lobby and sprayed them with tear gas. It was a standoff with the police. No one went to jail. No arrests made. Like nothing happened.
Wow.
So I want to get back. We only got a couple of minutes, but what else do you have? Because I'm really interested in this whole. I'm fascinated lately with the connections with the Beatles and Yoko Ono and stuff like that. And after the murders too, after the murder of John Lennon, Yoko pretty much came out and said that she was dabbling in the wrong kind of magic and she regretted it. And also too, there's an audio tape that I've heard of Paul McCartney saying he believes in magic with a K.
Right. Yeah, that's out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Beatles gets really deep and scary.
Yeah.
And like they're affiliated with like Jimmy Savile, who was like the Beast of England. And there are stories that McCartney was actually switched out, like in '66. And I actually laughed at that. Like I thought that was so crazy that couldn't be possible. And then I started reading the facts, and the guy grew like 2 inches. His eye color changed, and his ears are different. And you can't fake their ears back then, you know. And so a really good website for that is called Plastic. I guess Paul McCartney's nickname in England is Macca.
Right.
Paul Macca. So look up Plastic Macca, PLASTIC space Macca, MACCA, and look at the evidence. It's a mind blower.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get back. We got a break coming up.
Okay,
we'll get into that when we get back. With William Ramsey, author, filmmaker. He wrote Abomination, Devil Worship, and Deception in the West Memphis 3 Murders, and Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. The guy's an expert on the occult. He's an expert on Crowley. Fascinating information that we're going to get into here when we get back. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Folks, join me, Terry Ackerman, also known as Lady Horse, every Sunday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for A Touch of Country on Studio A. We have a variety of topics we discuss. We focus on country living, holistic healing, and self-reliance. I look forward to having you join us by listening in, calling in, or interacting into our chat room here at freedomslips.com. I can't wait to meet you.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our Seed Pack Special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy's staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps. What do you think it is? I don't know. Whatever it is.
Welcome out there, more gentlemen.
Join me, Joe Kiernan, and Dr. J every Sunday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight for Researchers on a Mission Radio. We will be interviewing guests in ufology, experts on the paranormal, and stories from you, the listener. Every Sunday, 10 p.m. in Studio B. Join us for some amazing conversations and edge-of-your-seat true thrillers.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
It's the Opperman Report on freedomslips.com, Studio A, every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. You can catch our shows on YouTube, on the Revolution Radio YouTube channel. And don't forget, the website is freedomslips.com, Studio A, and you can hit the donate button to keep the station alive and keep us going. You want to get a hold of me, the Opperman Report blog, or my website, emailrevealer.com, for any kind of PI work you might need. Okay, now William Ramsey just told us in chat that he has a new book coming out. I don't know why he keeps it a secret, but we got it out of him. So, William, tell us about the new book. What's going on with that? What's that going to be about? William?
Well, it's just going to follow people who were influenced by Crowley. So the trajectory of Crowley's teachings from his death in 1947 to the present day, and how many people have been influenced by him is probably, I think it will surprise. I was surprised when I figured out how many people it was. It goes all the way through his followers, who a lot of them came to the United States. There were followers such as Israel Regardie, another guy who was Fuller, who was one of the few people who met Adolf Hitler, was a disciple of Crowley. There was the founder of Wicca, Gerald Gardner, Harry Hay, who was a kind of what I would term a homosexual revolutionary, who's the founder of the gay rights movement, was a Crowley follower.
Really?
Not only a follower, but he was like a hardcore follower. Yeah, there was this spot in L.A. where Harry Hay, L. Ron Hubbard, and Jack Parsons, who was the founder, one of the founders of Jet Propulsion Laboratories, all associated doing Crowley rituals. So these are like, very important people. I mean, as far as like our 20th century culture is concerned.
Right.
Ian Fleming was like Ian Fleming, the founder of James Bond, was like Crowley's intelligence handler. And the first person, this character named Le Chiffre, who was in Ian Fleming's first book on Bond, was based on Crowley. So all these other people have used Crowley as a template, as for their like malevolent, evil, nemesis. And I was just going over some stuff in the chat about Somerset Maugham using Crowley in his first book, The Magician, and I include all that kind of interplay in Prophet of Evil, my first book. But this Children of the Beast, I think people will be surprised upon how many people who have, John Lennon, the Beatles, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, Anton LaVey, all these guys, so many up until today, people that are still around.
What do you think of this theory about Barbara Bush being a descendant of Crowley?
I looked into it a lot. I couldn't verify it. There are facts that show that her mother was in Paris in the Roaring 20s. Paris was a place where all the people with money wanted to go and have summer, or spend a summer or spend some time. And her name was Pierce, Barbara Pierce, I think it was, or Paulina Pierce. And but I could never verify that it actually did happen. But,
was she a follower of Crowley though in Paris?
Well, that's the rumor. The rumor
Right.
is Crowley was staying with a guy who was the editor of Vanity Fair, and he was doing all kinds of rituals and stuff like that required female servitors. And the rumor is that Pauline Pierce was one of them, and she was apparently in Paris at the time and came back from Paris pregnant.
Right.
And that was Barbara, and she looks kind of like Crowley. I mean, Crowley had a smaller body and a huge head, and she kind of has that kind of.
She does. The resemblance is uncanny, and I cannot think of any other motivation for George Bush to marry that woman. Okay, because he's a pretty good-looking guy with a good career and stuff like that. He was all hooked up all over the place with all kind of connections. Why would he marry her?
Yeah, and you have to think like they were set up very early, and they come from. I mean, Bush himself comes from, people who believe in good breeding and good stock, and so their marriages are. They have an arranged quality to them. And, and Crowley himself believed in breeding, human beings. I mean, I referenced that in his opinions of Prophet of Evil. His opinions and Hitler's are basically the same. Breed the good stock, kill off the bad stock.
Right.
Really hardcore eugenics positions, and the Bushes have always had that type of position as well,
and again, and their connection to 9/11 and September 11th and all that kind of stuff as well. It's just it's right in our faces. Yeah. So what else do you have back? I guess we'll get back to the Beatles and stuff like that we were talking about. Now, the whole Paul is dead kind of thing, because I'm coming to a point where I believe as well that I think you do, that Paul was swapped out by the Process Church.
Well, he might have been done by the process. I don't know who did it, but I do think that that's a different person. And the whole character of the Beatles changed as well.
Right.
Like they started out as this kind of rough and tumble music group, and then Sgt. Pepper's comes out, Crowley's on the cover, and they're advocating the use of drugs, LSD, and all the stuff that Paul, apparently the old Paul, was not for. He was not for this this change. He was actually kind of I think he had a kind of a clean cut sensibility. Like he just wanted to play nice music, and this Sgt. Pepper's was just an incredible cultural bomb. I mean, it influenced so much in people's thoughts. And then the intro is 20 years ago today, Sgt. Pepper's taught the band to play. Well, I think the album came out in 1967, so Crowley died in 1947. And that's the reference is that, that is Sgt. Pepper is Crowley. People have made that argument. I could never verify that.
Yeah, there's a million connections to Crowley and stuff like that with the Beatles. Just amazing stuff. But what about now the connections to the Manson Church and stuff, Manson family? Again, with the Beatles and stuff.
It's my understanding. I haven't found the actual quote, but somebody I've said I have to go back and through. But Manson said that he was the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley. So that's a pretty strong statement. And his view of the swastika, and Crowley said he was born with a swastika on his forehead or something like that. Where was it? He said he had a swastika on his chest, in the hairs of his chest when he was born. So Crowley liked the swastika as well, and Hitler liked the swastika. So, so I think that the Manson guys and Crowley, it's Beausoleil is there, and they're all in 1967 in San Francisco, and it's pretty clear that, at least in my opinion, that Manson isn't disclosing how much he got from the process, but the process called themselves the family. He called himself the family. He encouraged people to think of himself as Christ and all these other archetypes that the process used in their descriptive terms. So, it's for me, there's clear ideological parallels between Manson and the process and the Satanism.
Yeah, well, I'm forgetting right now, but the director of the Roman Polanski, right? And then you have Roman Polanski directing the movie, Rosemary's Baby.
In the Dakota.
Yeah, and all his connections with. Then you get back to his friendship with Robert Evans, and then Robert Evans is involved with a movie with Roy Raiden. Roy Raiden gets killed by members of the Process Church, who are bodyguards of Larry Flint.
Right. I mean, it's too much. It's so. And Evans, he was neck deep in it. Somehow he dodged a bullet on that one because Evans was way into that whole discussion, and he was angry, and yeah, it was. I don't know how he got away without being charged with anything. I've read over that topically, and from my memory, he had a lot more to do with that than people know in the public.
Well, I think one of the theories put forth by Alex Constantine was that O.J.'s drug dealing activities were with those bodyguards who killed Roy Raiden.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Metzger, I think, was the guy who shot Raiden. He was supposed to be known, or Menzer or something, some kind of name like that.
Sure.
He was supposed to be known as Manson 2.
The second Charles Manson, right?
Yeah, that's how he was referenced, I think, in Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil.
Yeah, those two seem to be involved in a lot of stuff as well. Those guys who murdered Roy Raiden. And they were even down with some CIA torture chambers down in South America. Are you familiar with that connection?
Something like that. I heard something like that. Like there's actually some kind of weird connection to Jim Jones.
Might have been Chile. Might have been. Oh, forget. You want to get into the whole Jim Jones thing. Listen to this, man. Did you know that O.J. Simpson's mother was a nurse in a psychiatric facility in San Francisco? That everyone who got their job there got it through Jim Jones People's Temples Church when he was when he was the what do you call it? Yeah, when he was working for the city.
I know the I used to drive by the projects where O.J. Simpson grew up, so I believe that, that's where Jim Jones found his most fertile, group to, join his church.
Yeah, and the whole Jim Jones thing, that's fascinating, man. That's a whole nother... Well, it's amazing how all this stuff goes on right in front of our faces, and we can just blindly just glance away from it like it's not some big, giant plot and that we're not in on,
there's so much that went on in California in the 60s that, it's like there's the Jim Jones, there's the Process, there's the Manson family, there's Scientology, there's the Symbionese Liberation Army, which came out of a lot of the jails of California, where they were doing all kind of MK Ultra experiments and creating patsies and false things. And the Symbionese Liberation Army, that's where Patty Hearst was captured.
Sure.
And then supposedly burned down the house, but people saw members of the Symbionese Liberation Army being walked out of the back of the house, So
well, that guy Sin Q, he had a history of, it was in mental hospitals again. He came out of mental institutions. He had a history with the CIA. And what do you call it? Now, their whole thing, you know what the similarities, not the similarities, but the foundation of the principles of the SLA is Kwanzaa, the Feasts of Kwanzaa. Did you know that? Oh, my God, look it up. Look up the Festival of Kwanzaa, the 7 days of Kwanzaa, and the principles of the SLA. It's the exact same thing. It is Kwanzaa. And,
wow.
Kwanzaa was created over there as well in San Francisco around that same period of time by, I believe, some guys, an offshoot of the Black Panthers at the time. True. Yeah, right. Oh, boy, right in our faces, man. It's all agents. And by the way, too, there was a connection too with the SLA, with the Yippies in New York. Because when I was with the Yippies in New York, I met guys from the Wells Springs commune based in California who had hit out those SLA guys. So there was some kind of connection between them as well. So it's just like a cesspool of agents and
cults and mind control and all kinds of...
And LSD seems to be a factor as well, Yeah. But wasn't LSD invented the same year as the CIA was created?
The LSD was created the same, something like that. I don't know when Hoffman made it. It seems like it was sometime in the 40s. I don't know exactly when it was.
Right, I think it was 1947. I think it was the same year. Hey, let's take some calls. You want to take some calls?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if the listeners have any better questions than me. The number is 702-605-4894. 702-605-4894. Oh, boy. When you were talking about all the people influenced by Crowley, it really is fascinating with this new book you have coming up. Now, who else do you have on that list we would all...
let me go back to it. I have an outline here. I've got, J.K. Rowling. She had her intro book. This is a book that sold millions and millions of copies, and her movies have been seen by billions. Harry Potter's first name is 5 and 6 letters, so it's like Harry Potter. So she emulates the principles of magic in his name, and the lightning bolt is a common symbol for Lucifer because Christ referenced Lucifer falling from heaven. I saw Satan fall from heaven like a lightning bolt, and then his wand is 11 inches long, so he's got the number of magic for his great little wand, and that whole thing is it's witchcraft. She knows, she has a deep understanding, and a lot of the names of the people in there reference important people in witchcraft, like the Sirius myth, and there's just tons of stuff there. So
and look at her story. Here she was, a single mom, welfare, or a homeless person, and now she's one of the richest women in the world.
Right. It's really incredible, and I think that she might be an initiate. I think that somebody might have backed her books.
Yeah.
That she is a figurehead. It's a nice cover story, but that's there's a hidden hand behind her, is what I'm saying.
I would agree.
Her middle name, she actually took the name K. The K is not her middle name. Her middle name isn't J. Catherine Rowling. She took the letter K as a representation of her for her book, and K is the 11th letter in the alphabet. which is why Crowley spells his words magic, M-A-G-I-C-K, because K is the 11th letter in the English alphabet. So it's a tie into the prime number of magic in her name and for Crowley. So
incredible.
And so, yeah, other people on the list is like H.R. Geiger is a high-level OTO member, which is Crowley's secret society, and that's the guy who like was the artist for the Aliens. So he's this is like a person in common culture who likes Crowley. And then Alan Moore is probably the biggest comic book artist of the 20th century. Really, he's not an artist; he's actually a writer, and other people do the artwork. But he's done V for Vendetta, From Hell, The Watchmen, all this other stuff, and he's just like a straight up Crowley follower.
Okay, so now you're telling me that V for Vendetta, V for Vendetta, the Guy Fawkes thing. That everyone's running around with these masks on, doing marches, mass march. This has a basic in Crowley.
I'm just saying that the writer of that is a straight up Crowleyite. Yes,
amazing,
hardcore.
Amazing.
I mean, go read. If you like read the original comic books, they're like full of all-seeing eyes, 93s. He's got like direct references from Crowley. Like in V for Vendetta, the main character says something like, "Do what thou wilt," or something like that. I mean, he's got it all in there. He says, Alan Moore says that he spends half of his time writing books and the other half of the time practicing witchcraft or practicing and studying the occult. So he knows all this stuff. And you go back and look through, like, since I've keyed into all the occult references and knowledge of Crowley and what's happened, it's right in your face. It's just all there. I mean, he had another one called, like, a book called Promethea. But Prometheus is the symbol of Satan because he was a titan who stole fire and gave it to man. So like people like, what's her name? Blavatsky used Prometheus as kind of like that was a very common allegory that was used for Satanists in the late 19th century, which is why in Rockefeller Center you see this big gilded statue of Prometheus.
Wow.
Do you know that in the Rockefeller, was it 30 Rock or whatever it is?
Yeah, I have heard. Yeah, I've heard these connections.
That's a straight representation of Satan. It's just straight Satanism. Yeah. So anyway, so getting back to Alan Moore, I mean, there's a lot more out there than people recognize. There's women
that we would recognize their names.
Yeah, you kind of came in and out for me there. I don't know.
Yeah, you're coming in and out for me too. I wonder if in the chat room, how's the audio coming out over the air? Write something in the chat room, let us know. But I was asking you about, in your book, who else do you have listed that was influenced by Crowley that we would recognize their names?
Well, those were kind of the ones that I went through. I mean,
right.
I don't know who else is in there, really. Alfred Kinsey, who was the kind of sexologist, was a follower or was interested in Crowley. And
really? How do you know that?
Well, he did. There's a picture of him at Crowley's Abbey of Limo, is kind of his magical center in Italy, and he was he really wanted to find Crowley's diaries. Kinsey was really a sex freak. He was pseudoscientific, and I mean, he's been totally debunked recently, but he was he believed in a lot of stuff Crowley did, liberation, sexual.
Kinsey was a child molester.
Of the worst sort.
Documented.
Yeah.
Because he talks about giving a 4-year-old like 24 orgasms in a 24-hour period. The man should be in prison. And how he's ever
been
quoted.
in a rubber room. He was totally deranged.
Yeah,
I mean, go look up how he died.
How did he die?
I can't say it on the air, but
really
it's bad. Yeah.
Just amazing, and he's used as an example. All his studies are used as an example of human sexuality and what's normal in sexuality today.
And if you want to see, there's an interesting tie-in in my Hollywood movie. If you want to go back to Polanski and Rosemary's Baby, they're having a discussion about the witch. There's a witch who's like living in the building, right? And the husband knows that he's a witch, and he takes a book and puts it on the book, like, get this book out of here. You don't need this. And it's a book on witchcraft, and he puts it into the bookshelf, is right above Kinsey's 2 books on sexual behavior of men. It's an incredible visual reference. It's really something else.
Fascinating.
That's not there by mistake. Yeah, it's not.
None of that stuff's by mistake. But that's in the movie Rosemary's Baby. You're saying?
Correct.
Wow. Oh boy, I tell you, man. You almost don't want to know this information, you know?
No, you don't.
Yeah,
it's bad. I mean, you're not part of these people. It's really bad. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
Okay, so we only got about 3 minutes to the break. And when we get back, we want to take some phone calls. The number is 702-605-4894. When we get back, calls for William Ramsey. Just fascinating work the guy's doing. It's just unbelievable with his YouTube channels and his books. But William, what else do you want to get to in this short time before we go to the break?
I think that... I think that it's just good to know that these people are out there and be aware of them. And if you can recognize their secret hand signs and secret gestures and the sign of silence and all the stuff that people like Damien Eccles makes, or these actors, these people in Hollywood are making, you won't fall into the spider's web of witchcraft and the occult. I just don't think that. It's like one of those things, once you get in, you can't get out, and a lot of these people meet tragic, awful ends. And so I definitely am against the practice of the occult, witchcraft, Satanism in general. It's just awful. Doesn't
gotcha.
Well.
Now, when we get back, we'll get into the whole Eccles thing in West Memphis 3. We might as well get into that, right? But before that, though, have you noticed, like, in the children's cartoons these days, just how amazingly prevalent it is, all this kind of satanic and occult, and just about every cartoon has some kind of a lizard-type demon in it. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really bizarre, and these guys get on there and they make these mudras, which is like a hand signals, and, they're not fooling people who know what's going on. So I've seen, like, Jack Black on a kid's show making satanic hand signs and stuff like that. It's bad.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just noticing just recently that one of these toys that they're coming out for Christmas, it's like one of these Mexican South American pyramids, and they're fighting off lizards that are in fact attacking the pyramid. It's just
wow.
Okay. So listen, William, what we're going to do is we're coming to a break. William Ramsey. But we're gonna reboot. I'm gonna reset and call you back so we get a better connection.
Okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
He wants a challenge. Let's give him one.
The voice that whispers in your ears are the screams that you fear. The mind you cannot defy is the heart that rules mankind. The people who made you are the gods that will save you. I am Steve Travesty. I am the voice. The ghost in the machine. Ghost in the Machine, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Studio B.
Right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps.
What are we supposed to do?
I'm gonna fight, because I'm used to it. The rest of you are gonna have a tougher choice. And look, I don't want to sell it to you. It's too ugly for that. And it's ugly, and it's hard. But when you're fighting in your own backyard, you're fighting for your family, it all hurts a little less and it makes a little more sense. But for us, this is our home. Even the tiniest flea can drive your big dog crazy. So the first thing we have to do is learn how to work together. Become a unit. And that's going to take some time. So we're going to have to evolve. Rewire our reflexes. Learn new skills and adapt old ones. So we'll find people we can trust. Friends with their ears to the ground who can help us get the things we need to fight back. Watch what they do. Study their tactics, their routines. The more we know, the easier it will be to hurt them. But we'll need to be smart, and we'll need to be patient. We'll hit them on our terms. When we're good and ready. We inherited our freedom. Now it's up to all of us to fight for it.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where the fight begins and information never sleeps.
There is no good and evil. There is only power. And those too weak to seek it.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Be sure to tune in weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Strange Universe with Sean David Morton. The strange, interesting, and engaging wide variety of topics. So be here. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Boy, listen to that cheering, man. Every time we take a break. Every time I put my picture up, you hear that cheering in the background. It's amazing. Okay, so we got here for our guest today, William Ramsey, who is the author of a couple of great books. There's another book coming up. He's a filmmaker, but the author of Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order, Abomination, Devil Worship and the Deception in the West Memphis 3 murders. He also has a video out about occult symbolism in Hollywood movies, which sounds very interesting. Before we get back to William, though, I just want to give a shout-out to my friend Brian Keller, who has a show on Studio B right around the same time. He's on Monday to Friday, and I think it starts at around 10 a.m., 10, 11, 12, and goes like 2 hours. So we overlap on Thursdays. I think his show is over now. But he's a great guy, very professional broadcaster. He's interviewed me a bunch of times on his other shows, and we've become good friends on Facebook and stuff like that. He's a really professional broadcaster on Studio B, Monday to Friday, and it's called the BK Report. And he's also working for some presidential candidate right now, promoting him. So big shout-out to Brian Keller. Everybody check him out. Monday to Friday, Studio B, the BK Report. So now, William Ramsey. One of the things, you've done this book about the West Memphis 3, and I'm sure it's been gotten you a lot of negative attention from these characters over there. But why don't you tell us, lay it out from beginning to end, the occult involvement with the West Memphis 3 before the murders, during the murders, and then the supporters, and even now you've turning up stuff right now that after they've been released from prison, connections to the Process Church back in the news again.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. You know, I came across a video about the kind of main character, Damien Eccles, and it involved Crowley, and that's really what kind of piqued my interest. So I started researching and reading, and I was stunned at how much occultism was involved and how little other people really wanted to address it. And it really starts all the way back in West Memphis with, you know, where the environment these guys were growing up in, the people they associated with. There were tons of stories after the murders happened in 1993. You know, the townsfolk came in and they all had different stories, but corroborated the central fact that these guys were all into witchcraft and stuff like that, and came, like 30 or 40 different people with information that overlapped, and so I, that's really when I was like, well, why isn't anybody telling the truth? The main book that's out there is Devil's Knot by Mara Leverett, which barely even scratches the surface of that. She just covers really what happened at the trial, but in the court case, it was Crowley was an issue in court, and then these movies came out and attracted a bunch of people to get involved, and it made it sound like this guy was these three guys were innocent or weren't involved to the public. But for me, they're still they pled guilty again in 2011, which should tell you everything. They weren't willing to go to court or anything, so they pled guilty, got out. And what happens? The main central character kind of returns to the occult, starts hanging out with people, one of whom is a known process member, and it's incredible. It's just, frankly, it's just an incredible case. It's nothing like what most people have been told it is, and it's that's the reason why I wrote the book.
Yeah, we did a whole show about that too. When I filled in for Douglas Dietrich on Saturday Night Fire Lines, and it's available up on the YouTube channel. And then we had a conversation afterwards, and that's going to be up on the YouTube channel as well. A little private conversation, an after show that we did. But now, remember how we were discussing the vampire activity and the blood drinking activity of this bunch as well?
Right. So I mean, he had this guy Damien Eccles had multiple stories of him drinking blood and licking blood and thinking that blood gave him power. And he admitted in his court records and his voluminous mental health records that he was a blood drinker. And I even have a video on my video channel of him saying, yeah, I don't drink blood, I lick it. So he's even admitting it on video. And it's incredible. And there's all these other people, like his girlfriend's mother. I mean, his girlfriend, I think her name was Dominique Tier, or Aaliyah Tier was her real name, but she says, oh yeah, my mom drinks blood, like in a very casual manner to police. And, it's...
Yeah, I think the quote was, my mother drinks blood, I drink blood, we all drink blood, what's the big deal? It's something like that,
Yeah. And to me, that's so central to this whole case that it's surprising that people gloss over it. I just, that was like the primary shocker of, for me, of like reading this, is like, doesn't anybody see this? I mean, these are admissions these people are making. They're telling you that's what they do, and you're just like, oh, no, not material.
Yeah, and all the original supporters, too, were all Wiccans and involved in that kind of stuff as well, because Damien tried to claim that he was a white Wiccan and he wasn't into drinking blood or anything. Publicly, he tried to claim that he wasn't doing anything wrong, but there's all kind of evidence of him stomping on dogs, having dog skulls and cat skulls and mice skulls in his bedroom in his home, all kind of activity like that.
And his ex-girlfriend, like, to the police and the public, and yeah. I mean,
well, even while when he was in prison, then he had a Buddhist ceremony for his wedding, right? And he was claiming he was a Buddhist while he was in prison. But what's he doing now that he's out? Describe where he moved to, and
he moved to like the center of the witchcraft trial, Salem, Massachusetts. Claiming that that's a place where he won't be persecuted because they've woken up. Now they oversee the thing. So he's tacitly admitting that he's still a witch. And he's into Crowley, and he's like into crystals, tarot, energy. He's teaching people about magic. I mean, and he's covered himself in tattoos that are all associated with black magic, black dragons, and just all kinds of Theban alphabet, which is very important to witches. It's like the classic magical alphabet that goes back to European magic books, and it's incredible, and nobody seems to put the tie together. Like, okay, he's doing it now, and it's all consistent. It's very odd,
right? No one seems to care, but he's out in the open right now. He's on The View, Now, when he goes on shows like The View and Larry King and Piers Morgan, does he come right out and say, hey, yeah, you know what? I'm doing tarot cards and I'm doing this. I have all kinds of pictures of me dressed up as a vampire on my Twitter page and dressed up in devil costumes and all kind of stuff. He doesn't say that, does he?
No, he doesn't do that, but he makes all kinds of secret hand gestures and signs, one of which is the sign of silence, which is a common hand gesture made in the occult, which is supposed to keep your interest quiet. And you can see it on those things on my YouTube page, just him doing it over and over and over again, that it's not by accident. He's doing it intentionally.
Is that the last one you sent me? You sent me a link. I didn't get a chance to watch it because I watched all the other ones he did on the Process Church, which were excellent, by the way, the 4-part series he did there. But then you sent me another one about Damien Eccles. Now, is that on there?
I think so. I think part of it is. I have to go back and look because my videos kind of overlap each other. So yeah. I do have, I haven't broken down on the video on the different shows he was on. But, they ask him just the biggest softball questions. They're clearly coached by him or his public relations team to just, get the Oprah audience, all in, teared up over somebody who's been supposedly unjustly convicted for 20 years and, not ask any hard questions like, where were you? I mean, and there's actually, you can see on one of my YouTube videos that even after 20 years, these guys cannot get their story straight. They cannot come to a conclusion because Eccles says he was at home making calls on his phone.
Right. And
Steve Baldwin, who is another one, says they were at Walmart playing video games. So it's shocking. I mean, what? You guys can't even get your story straight after.
And then you have Jesse Miskelly, who basically says, I did it.
Yeah. I mean, he can't stop confessing. Every time somebody calls and talks to him, yeah, we did it. I mean, it's and then, if you go up and tell that, somebody just keeps saying, well, there was just that one, horrific 14-hour interrogation that took place, and they curtail the actual factual record to stuff that's in a book. A lot of people have just been totally duped, mind controlled, and manipulated, and they're unwilling to acknowledge that fact that they really don't have a really good understanding of the factual basis of the case.
But now, since Damien gotten out, you had mentioned earlier in our after show chat about how he hired this big New York PR firm.
Yeah, right. So this guy, Soury, Soury, so he has a PR firm. So people who think that he's just talking, by himself and he doesn't have the assistance of somebody who's paying for clearly what are paid internet trolls who I have encountered. These people they don't have free time. They are getting paid to countermand or counteract anything online that is negative about the West Memphis 3. And so this public relations this approach is very skilled, and they're making sure they get their point of view out above and beyond what anybody else does.
Yeah, I noticed some very strange anomalies with our last interview when it was posted up on YouTube. That I'm getting way more hits to the website where the YouTube is posted than I'm seeing views on the video. So I'm assuming somehow they took this down, they made a copy of it, and they've been circulating it around themselves. And also, to the comments I'm getting, don't appear like they listen to the actual YouTube. But I'm getting the same programmed comments that you hear over and over again. So it is an organized group for sure. The Defense Fund and the Awareness Fund and all these organizations are an organized group of trolls and supporters, and probably paid as well, like you said. But now, since he's come out, you've documented some connections between him and well-known process people.
Well, the number one guy is this guy, Genesis P. Orridge, who he's been in a movie with and associated with. So that's really it. And there was another one that from there was a message board, Salem Web, in Salem, Oregon, that Michael Blatty, the son of Peter Blatty, the writer of The Exorcist, was involved in. There was another guy by the name of Fred Gianelli, who is he's an occultist associated with Genesis P. Orridge and probably the process, because he always would sign his letters telepathically yours, which is, something the process believed they could do, which is, engage in telepathy. So it makes me believe that he's an affiliate or he's one of them. I really don't know, but I've also gotten information that a lot of these guys are into this trance music, like this kind of rave music, and that's something Fred Gianelli does for a living, is do this rave music. So, and man, they're just nasty, just incredibly nasty, just aggressive, and it's. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, me neither. I'm involved in a lot of hot topics, like the George Zimmerman trial and stuff like that, and just the level of aggressive antagonism that comes back when you bring up this West Memphis 3 thing is like nothing I've ever seen before. We're taking calls for William Ramsey at 702-605-4894. If you have any questions about his book about 9/11, September 11th, Aleister Crowley, or the West Memphis 3 case. All this stuff that William Ramsey's an expert on. So let's think. We only got a few minutes left. I think we got a call coming in. Okay, only got a few minutes left before we have to go. What was now? You have another book coming out. What's the name of that new book you have coming out?
Children of the Beast: The Disciples of Aleister Crowley. That'll be the title. That's the working title. It's called Children too because there's a concept within magic, like you don't have, like not a real child, but a magical child, which is somebody who follows you. So the concept is like they're magical offspring. They're believers. So the child, that's the reference to the magical child kind of concept, Children of the Beast. And the Beast is what Crowley was known as, sorry.
Right, yeah, right. Crowley was known as the Beast. And you see Crowley as the center of all of this. Now, how about before Crowley? What was there before?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, he came out of 19th century occultism, so it was...
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, guys. I accepted the call instead of adding him to group. Are you there, William? Might have lost William, too. Sorry, guys. What happened was when a call came in from Christian Wallace, I accepted the call instead of adding him to group because I'm new at this. I've only been doing a show for a few months. And so I really apologize to the listeners for screwing that up. I'm getting William Ramsey back.
Okay.
Hey, you're back, William.
I'm back, sorry.
And that's my fault. I screwed up. But what were you saying? I was going to take a call, and I didn't add him to the group. I accepted it. So what were you saying? What were you in the middle of saying?
We were just talking about the people in the 19th century who influenced Crowley. He came poets and artists and all this other stuff. So that's really what he believed he was the reincarnation of a guy by the name of Eliphas Levi, who wrote books like The Keeper of the Mysteries. That was his most important writer. And Eliphas Levi influenced the one of the Masonic guys by the name of Albert Pike. So they're these people. They kind of carry the torch for each other. They kind of pass their ideas on, and that's really their goal, is to find people to tutor disciples. And so Crowley definitely springboarded ahead based upon a lot of 19th century occultists.
Wow. Okay, and what do you have on it? Do you think that the Church of Scientology, did that come out of Crowley? How much influence did Crowley have on the Church of Scientology?
Well, a lot. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard was a member of Crowley's Agape Lodge in L.A., and he hung out with Jack Parsons, who was definitely the head of that Agape Lodge. And that's all fairly well recorded.
Yeah.
By people who lived at this house he had in Pasadena, where they let it was such a big house. He subleased rooms, and all these people wrote about Parsons and Hubbard and their relationships with each other's wives and friends and all this other stuff. So Hubbard definitely was exposed to Crowley. He was admitted to, his son admitted it, and who was like his firstborn son, guy by the name, they nicknamed him Nibs, but his name was L. Ron Hubbard Jr.
And he was
and
castrated.
He changed his name.
Was he castrated?
That was that's the rumor for LaVey's son.
Okay.
That's the rumor. LaVey's son was supposedly castrated, but I could never confirm that. But yeah, it's
okay. We have a caller.
The Hubbard and Scientology and Crowleyism. The connections there. If you go to like a lot of the Hubbard centers, and they have this cross on all these buildings. It's basically the Golden Dawn cross. It's a symbol of the Rosicrucians, who believed that their flower of their ideas was on the dead cross of Christianity, and they have that kind of same kind of concept.
So that's there in that's there in today's science.
A lot of people don't see those connections until they get really deep in, but Hubbard was really something else. I mean,
well, getting back
I
to
go
Jack
into the
Parsons.
detail in my book. You can take. He talks about his stuff like it's called the tech, and you could probably just take magic and change the words, and the forms would be different, but the meaning is the same. It really is.
Real quick about the death of Jack Parsons. What do you think of that? That was.
It was a suspicious death. The guy had been working around, bomb-making material his whole life, even from when he was a little kid, 12, 13. And then he, supposedly dropped a fulminate of mercury and blew up. I don't know. It was kind of suspicious, but he might have just made a mistake. I don't know. I mean, he had plans. He had future plans, and he was headed places. So, it makes me think that it was a mistake.
Yeah, that it wasn't a suicide.
That it was not a suicide, correct.
Do you think there's any chance that the death was staged and he didn't die?
Well, I don't know. I've never heard that.
Okay.
Anything's possible. I just assumed the story was the story. I mean, maybe, he was definitely under investigation. The FBI has the files that are pretty thorough about him, his association. Third-party files from the FBI investigating his connections to communism, and he stole some material and might have given it to the Israelis. So, he was definitely on the radar, and they might have washed him and staged a fake death. His mother supposedly killed herself after he died. So it makes me believe that she really believed that he killed himself or he died. So I don't know.
Or unless she was staged as well,
Anything's nothing is beyond consideration these days. So I don't know. I just assume that story is true.
We began the show talking about how 9/11 and how there's a lot of evidence that it was planned, long-range planning going back before the buildings were constructed. So to think that they would stage these deaths is not a leap from that point. But now let me ask you this, because now a lot of these people who are 9/11 truthers also seem to be supporters of the West Memphis 3 and stuff like that. How it's like a dichotomy there, don't you think?
It is pretty odd, and I've always thought that it's just the whole. There are people out there playing roles and
right,
getting involved in things that have a deeper agenda, and it's important to know that that what are they really there for, or why are they doing that? Are they really unbiased observers, or are they objective?
Or are they agents, provocateurs, and they're, being
right.
told what to do, yeah. Because they are everywhere, and I grew up with it back on the Lower East Side with the yippies and all that stuff. I've seen galore.
Oh, there's tons. I mean, it's a really scary proposition, and, you got to really watch out. Like, some people really want to, join up and get into a group, but most of those groups have been infiltrated by people of different stripes, So
right,
if you've got a group
when
of
you're being infiltrated, it's not always the person who's coming at you. They could be handled. The person coming at you could be handled by someone else and not even realize that they're being handled. So it goes in levels too.
Yeah.
Well,
no
William,
doubt.
we're down to like 2 minutes. I want you to get out whatever it is you want to sum up with your opinions, your books, your videos. What do you want to say?
Well, I think that Crowley was a pestilential figure. I think he was an evil figure, and I think that what he advocated really isn't what's best for human beings and their lives. He had a very selfish view of how he should operate amongst people. And I think that as a Christian, I think that the real answer lies with the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and that people should. The best thing to do is pick up a Bible and read it for yourself, the New Testament, and that's really my testimony. I'm not pro Crowley. I'm interested. The only reason I study Crowley in the occult is because I think it's an important topic for people to know and understand.
Okay, so William Ramsey's his website is occult911.com.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. The heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger